Welcome back to day 3. Now, before I begin, I want to touch on a few things. First, if you haven't began journaling yet, I want to make sure that you do that. Get a journal, get a notebook, and every day write down the key points. Sometimes we think, oh, I'll remember that. But the whole goal of this is that you're developing a blueprint for your life. And so in order to do that, you have to write down what God is showing you every day, what you're learning, and how to apply it. What does this look like in action? The entire goal of this is not to come out of 21 days feeling great and then 6 months later you're back at square one. This is to build a blueprint that you have not only for this 21 days, but for this year, for next year, for 10 years from now, that you can actually go back to and tweak and adjust. But this is a blueprint for a healthy life. Take it and run. Now, when I think about building a house, right, we don't just throw up windows and there's no foundation. Before we even lay the foundation or build the walls, we actually have a stage of prepping and planning. And so in the same way, before we can build this blueprint, there's planning involved, there's prep, we have to reflect, there's modifications that need to be made to our lives. We need to reform some things and revise some things. So I know you're wanting to build the house now and decorate the inside. But just like in building a house, we cannot skip these foundational steps. So trust the process, trust the process. We're going to get to some of the other specific topics on physical outside health, but we've got to also lay this foundation. Now, this season is not business as usual. Things are about to shift in a drastic way, and we need to be ready and equipped to go and step into this new assignment. Yesterday, we went after our why. What is our big why? Where is our treasure? And that led us to the heart, because where your treasure is, your heart will be also. Now, we asked God to show us where our treasure is. God, show us areas of our life where myself, God, show me where I'm seated on the throne of my heart. Now, I hope you took the time to examine your time, your pursuits, your activities, etc., to see what that would reveal about where your treasure is. If you recognize your screen time, you're like, wow, screen time, 3 hours, prayer time, 10 minutes, screen time, 2 hours, Bible time, 15 minutes. This is a real easy way to identify the reality of where we are. Again, it's not shame and condemnation, but we have to examine our hearts. King David said, when I was on my bed, I searched my heart and was silent. He asked, Lord, examine me and see if there be any wicked way in me. We've got to examine our hearts. We've got to face this reality, because the whole goal is to step into the new thing. We forget the past and we build a new habit. We build a new plan for how we're going to live our life. And that's the goal. Now, back to the heart, part 2. From the heart springs the issues of life. Now, Proverbs 14:30 also says, a tranquil heart gives life to the flesh, but envy makes the bones rot. Now, these verses both demonstrate that there is a connection between our heart, our spiritual, that component of our body, and the outward physical, our flesh. And so when you think about, why are we talking about the inward thing and the heart and all this and the treasure? Like, I want to talk about health. I want to get going on my diet. We have to recognize, just like these verses say, our heart and the issues of our heart, from the heart spring the issues of our life. The outward is all coming from what's inside. Now, I want you to imagine if you have this pond or stream on your property and you're trying to clean it up. It's contaminated and filled with bacteria and chemicals. And so you keep cleaning it out and you're trying to get a filter for it and all of these things. And you don't realize that upstream is a chemical production plant or a waste management plant. And they're piping all of this into the water right upstream. No matter what you do down here, unless you go to the source in the environment, there's an environmental term called point source. No matter what you do, you are not going to clean up this mess because you haven't gone to the point source. And so you have to go to the point where this contamination is happening if you want to clean it up. And so many times we are trying to clean up an area over here. We don't realize our heart is the point source. There's some things in here that need to get cleaned up. And it applies to our heart in that way. So many times, even in health, we're looking for we fix things with band-aids, right? Like a guy or somebody who gets a gastric bypass surgery, they remove all of their intestines or whatever they do, and then they end up regaining the weight later. The fact of the matter is there was something internal. There was an issue of the heart. There was a stronghold. Their flesh hadn't been crucified in this area, and then they end up back where they were. So we have to deal with the heart. That's that foundation piece in order to live victoriously in our flesh and in a physical way. Now, I highlighted for me how it wasn't my knowledge of God's love or what I read about his love or heard of it that changed me. It was when I had a revelation of his love. I had this heart transplant, and it actually, again, changed my physical life. What God did on the inside affected me physically. It changed my why, which then impacted the vision and direction my life would take. And that's why these questions right now are so important to really dive into, because we've got to seek our hearts. We've got to see who's on the throne of our hearts. And for me, when I shared that story, my transformation from what I call like the American Christian dream or my theoretical Christianity to actual was when God changed my heart. We have to ask God for a love revolution, because we will serve where a treasure is. And if we love something, we'll die for it, right? If you're a parent, you'll die for your kids. You'll do anything. And we want that same love for God and same love for people. Now, when this revelation took place in my heart of God's love, it helped me remove myself from the throne and put God back in his proper place as the Lord of my life, the Lord of my thoughts, the Lord of my plans, the Lord of my money, the Lord of my time, all of it. And so the topic for today is actually called Dethroning the High Places. What gets in the way of your why? Now, the high places in the Bible were simply places of idol worship. And so we're going to have to, if we're going to deal with the heart, we have got to actually go to the places, the idols and the things that are actually keeping us from putting the Lord in that spot in our heart. Now, when you think about in the Bible, the first thing that Israel always was commanded to do when entering promise or going to take the land was to remove the high places, smash the sacred pillars, break down the pagan altars. That's Exodus 34, Deuteronomy 12, tear down the altars, smash the pillars, put their sacred posts to the fire, cut down the image of their God. God was always dealing with the high places, the altars, take them down. Judges 3:7 says they forgot the Lord their God, and they served the Baals and the Asheroth, which was the high places. Those were the altars that the Israelites would erect. They would erect the altars to these gods. When you think of Gideon, the first thing God commanded him to do before he went to battle was what? Tear down the altar of your father. He was supposed to go, before he even went to battle or did anything else, God had him tear down the altar. Solomon, who was the wisest man to ever live, think about this. It says at the end of his life, when he grew old, his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not fully devoted to the Lord his God. Guys, this is a lifelong thing. It's not, when that happened to me years ago, I cannot tell you how many times along the way I've wrestled with this, where there have been seasons where I've worked so hard. It's cost me so much, literally like everything we have, and I see no fruit. And I'm like, Lord, where's the harvest? And God would say to me, am I enough? Like, even if you get no earthly reward for this, am I your portion? Like, if you get nothing on this earth in return, but you get me, is that enough? Is the Lord my portion? Is he my treasure? So this is a lifelong thing. But for Solomon, who's the wisest man ever, it didn't prevent him from erecting these altars. It says he built these idolatrous high places and worshiped these other gods. And so the worship of pagan gods, it took people's eyes off of the Lord, and it interfered with their relationship with him. The people began to look to idols to provide guidance and provision and deliverance from life's challenges. And sometimes we think, oh, I don't bow down to wood statues. I don't bow down to I don't have a golden calf on my counter. That's not me. But we have to ask ourselves, where do we go to seek deliverance? What do we bow to when we need provision? Where do we go to seek relief from life's challenges? The reality is in the Old Testament, when the Israelites worship the idols, they were idols of fertility and prosperity and harvest, etc. They weren't worshiping the idols because they loved the idols. They actually worshiped the idols for what they hoped they would receive from the idols. It was self. They wanted a good harvest. They needed prosperity. They wanted a baby. They wanted fertility. It was all about them. And little has actually changed in today's culture. We still have high places in our culture and in our lives. And a high place, again, is anything that elevates itself above the Lord. Now, I love the story of the rich young ruler because he asks Jesus, what must I do to be saved? Jesus tells them the commandments, like keep the commandments. And the ruler replies, all of these I've kept from my youth. Now, here's the thing. He lived that righteous Christian life. But Jesus knew something this man was blinded to in his heart. And so Jesus responds, go and sell all your possessions and give the money to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come follow me. Now, again, I'm not advocating if you're not selling everything and giving it to the poor, then you're not following Jesus. That's nothing to do with this. Hear what God is saying in this parable. Hear what Jesus is demonstrating. His treasure was on earth. And God is saying, hey, go sell all of it and you'll have treasure in heaven. Then come follow me. But when the young man heard this, he went away sad, for he had many possessions. Now, think about this. This is what happened. It revealed where his heart was. God actually wasn't first. He was. He loved his life. He loved himself more. And so when Jesus presented this opportunity to lay everything down, ultimately, he wasn't willing. Think about that. He wasn't willing. He was still the king on the throne of his heart. He wanted salvation, not Jesus. So it was self-preservation. Like, we always call fire insurance. Like he wanted his kingdom now, not in heaven. He didn't want his treasure in heaven. He wanted his treasure now. His treasure was on earth. It was his own pleasure, his own life, what he had in his possession now. So here is this man who did everything right, but Jesus knew that Jesus knew that he was still sitting on the throne of his heart. Jesus wasn't the Lord of his heart. He was. And when confronted with the choice, he walked away sad. Isn't that crazy? He walked away sad. Now, this is the crazier part. Jesus let him walk away sad. And he says, and then the disciples are so astonished. They go, well, then no one can be saved. Who can be saved then? And Jesus goes, with man, this is impossible. But with God, with man, this is impossible. With God, all things are possible. Nothing's impossible with God. And so we actually have to realize this is impossible without the Lord. We have to ask him. We should be daily praying. And this is a part of like activity one. Put in your journal, God, change my heart. Help my treasure to be you. Help me not to put myself on the throne. Who am I living for? Help me to know that without you, this is impossible. It is impossible to fully grasp what you've done, what you've given us, what our treasure really is. And the world is just lying and telling us constantly. We're inundated with the message that you need more and that this is going to make you happy and you got to do this and self-help and all self, me time. There's nothing wrong with the balance of life, and we'll get into that later. But we're being fed a lie. The Lord is our portion. And we have to realize, are we willing to lay everything down? Or is Jesus still on the throne of our heart? And so here today, we have to ask, what idols have we allowed to be erected in our heart? And how do we tear them down? So write that down. What idols have we allowed to be erected in our life? And how do I tear them down? How do I tear them down, Lord? During the 21 days, it's going to be crucial to crucify our flesh. Colossians 3:5 says, put to death, therefore, what is earthly in you: sexual immorality, impurity, passion, evil desire, covetousness, which is idolatry. This is all idolatry. Matthew 16:24, if anyone wishes to come after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. Galatians 5:24, and those who are Christ's have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. Galatians 5:13, do not use liberty as an opportunity for the flesh, but through love, serve each other. Serve each other. So write those questions down, answer those questions. And now we've got to figure out, God, how do I dethrone these idols from my heart and replace them with you? So today's activity is really just a replacing. God, show me what I need to replace. Bad attitudes, bad choices. Just how do I crucify my flesh? How do I remove myself and put you on the throne? How do I replace what's temporal with eternal? Schedule wise, how do I replace, 4 hours of time on the TV and my phone and in a magazine and whatever with some Bible time? Now, there's some balance, and this is going to be a step and a day at a time. It's, you can do it radically and cold turkey if you need to, but maybe it's a step at a time. Instead of 2 hours on your phone, you're doing an hour. Maybe you just cut it out altogether. Pray with the Lord and decide for yourself. Even if you're a parent, do this with your kids. How much time do you spend taking your kids to activities and this and that and all these things compared to volunteering, serving a ministry, worship as a family, discipleship as a family? Like, we've got to get our time in order. So this is a replacing activity. List activities that can be replaced with something else. And so look for these ways. How can you create these small replacements and build new habits? The 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. that I mentioned on the phone, maybe that's a tool for you. Maybe you just cut out social media altogether for the 21 days and then slowly implement back in. Okay, God, how many minutes a day? I have a 15-minute time frame on my Instagram. So figure out what works for you. It might not look like 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. It might not look like anything I'm doing, but just find out for you, what are the steps you need to take. Now for food, maybe you practice portion control. There's a Bible verse that says, let a knife be put to my throat if I'm given to gluttony. Maybe it's the 3-2-1 rule. Okay, I'm not going to eat 2 hours before bed. Cut back the time you eat at night, for fasting. So these are all the different ways we're looking for how we can replace something that's not good for us with something that is good for us. Fasting. Okay, you have to establish by today, what kind of fast are you going to do? We need to fast. There are some things that only come out by fasting and prayer in a spiritual sense. Fasting cripples our flesh. Fasting breaks strongholds, but physically it's so good for our body as well. And we'll also touch on that later. Fasting is so important. And so let's do a fast. Now I'm on this Plexus 3-day reset. I love it. It's the first time I've ever used it. Sometimes it's hard for me to do a fast, and I don't fast 3 days every month. But with this thing I'm taking now, I point over there, it's over there. With this thing I'm taking right now, the Plexus Reset, it has 3 days worth of different packets of like collagen soups and drinks, and just, it's all liquid based. And for 3 days, you're just taking some things that are helping clean out your body, get you healthy, give you energy, and yet you're fasting. And so it's something that is designed to, you take it once a month even, or if you travel or you go on a holiday. And so it's called the Reset. It's a 3-day reset, and I love it. I'm actually looking forward to the next packet. So if you want to establish fasting in your life, reach out to me about the Reset, because it's amazing. And today is the last day where if you get the Reset and the combo, then you get a package of the Slim Free. So the Slim is the drink that helps curb hunger. And so there's some supplements you can take as well to help with this. But when I wrap that and tie that up to fasting, we have to fast. Do whatever it takes. If you have to do the Reset to get into a style of fasting or a lifestyle of fasting, then do it. Eventually, I've done 21-day fasts, and I'll get into fasting specifically later, but start a fast today and find out, ask the Lord, what kind of fast am I doing? You have to write it down or you will compromise. So if God says no sugar for the next 3 weeks, you're going to be on Saturday like, oh, did God really say on Saturday? In 2 weeks from now, did God really say not to eat dessert? Write it down. Now, spending, we're going to actually look at how can we replace some of our spending habits. Maybe we practice contentment, and I'm not going to buy anything for 21 days. Maybe we clean out our closet and start simplifying some of our things. Maybe we're going to get into financial stewardship later, but this is an area now where we can begin even replacing how we shop. Maybe I need to donate more and spend less on how I look. Like, let's just go through these things and in a non-condemning way. God, what do I need to replace with something that's beneficial? Exercise, final one. If you don't exercise, start. Start with 2 days, build it up slowly. Go on a 10 to 12 minute, go on a 10 to 15 minute walk. Do 10 to 12 minutes of exercise. I have the exercise routine. Reach out to me about it and I'll get it to you. It's probably, we've had some technical delays, so it's going to be ready next week. But if you need some exercises, reach out to me. But it's time to start taking these little steps. Now, I did say the final one, but the real final one is time management. Look at your time, look at things you can replace, and let's go after this together. So that's a lot for today, but let's simplify it this way: replacing. We're replacing idols with the better thing. We're replacing food idols with something better. We're fasting to crucify our flesh. We're replacing poor habits with better ones. We're replacing inactivity with some exercise. We're going to make these small adjustments and begin to implement them into our life. So that's the goal for today. I'm so proud of you. Do not quit. Keep going. Your life is worth it. Your health is worth it. And you're worth it. So keep going. Now I'm going to close in prayer. Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for all you're doing. I pray, Lord, that you would identify and give us revelation as to areas of our life where there are idols in our heart. Help us to dethrone the high places in our life and in our heart, God, and set you on the throne of our life. Give us revelation of what you've done for us so that we know you're worth it. We need a revelation again, just like yesterday, of your love. And then give us the wisdom to apply the knowledge we're receiving to our lives so we know how to take action. Show us what to fast. Show us what to replace. Show us how to better steward our time, steward our family, steward our health, steward our children's lives, our discipleship to them. We need your wisdom. I bless every woman here watching. I bless them with strength. I bless them with the courage. I bless them with the hope to know that change is possible. It might take time, but they can do it. I just pray hope over them. I pray all of this in the name of Jesus. Amen. Amen. See you tomorrow.